How's it going, Starseekers? Welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at Commandos 2 HD Remaster on the Nintendo Switch. It's a real-time tactical action game where you take control of a crack team of commandos, each with their own skill sets, and embark upon a mission to stop the German war machine. The game is a HD remaster of the original Commandos 2 Men of Courage, which released way back in 2001. Now, we have seen many remakes and remasters in the last few years, but does this one do justice to what was an epic strategy series? Let's get right into this review and see whether it's worth your time and money. So kicking things off, the game begins with a brief intro video. This is essentially stock footage from World War II which sets the scene for us, and the game takes place somewhere after the Battle of Dunkirk, but before the invasion attempt on the UK. We're informed that the Allies have assembled a team of commandos skilled in all sorts of weapons and explosives, and that they've been deployed to try and stop the German forces. So after starting a new game, we begin with a couple of tutorial missions which teach us the game's controls, or at least attempt to. And I'll say right now that if you've ever played a Commandos game on PC, you should prepare yourself for the shit show that's the HD remastered game's control scheme. Right away we find that unlike the usual mouse and keyboard controls where you direct commandos with a cursor, this has all been done away with, and now we move commandos directly with the left thumbstick. As you can see by this handy dandy diagram, the game has a ton of different button combinations for you to learn, which is a pain to start with, but you do get used to what each button does after a while. Now, you start each mission with specific commandos, each with their own skill sets. You can switch between the commandos by tapping the L button, and pressing and holding the button brings up a selection menu which displays each commando's abilities, though this really doesn't help that much. Here you can see that it states that the sapper's weapons are the bazooka and flamethrower, but he can also use rifles, pistols and several other small arms. The thief, on the other hand, can't use any weapons, which for a start is a little contradictory to the game's intro, which states that they're skilled in all sorts of weapons, and in fact for some reason the thief can't even pick up certain weapons. Now, this intro section sees you knocking out a few guards in order to get into the complex, and most commandos can knock out enemies, though first you have to have your fists equipped, which means switching between your weapons by holding ZR and selecting them from the radial menu. Enemies who are unconscious will wake up after about 20 seconds have passed, so in order to stop this you can tie them up and store the bodies somewhere safe, but again you'll find that only certain characters can actually tie up enemies and move them. And this is just one of the many aspects of the game that you'll have to learn through trial and error. So each mission in the game sees you completing a set number of objectives. These are outlined at the start of missions, but the game cycles through them so quickly that it's hard to actually understand or note down what you should be doing. Now, you can view the objectives by opening your mission log, but this just gives you a list of objectives, and other than small markers on your minimap, there's no other help or direction given to you, which for me just led to frustration as I tried to muddle my way through missions but often failed them for no apparent reason. Missions themselves are generally filled with a bunch of different enemies and obstacles to make your way past in order to complete your objectives, and each enemy has a field of view which can be highlighted, though you can only highlight one enemy at a time. You'll often find that enemies are also hidden by buildings, which is where the game's camera controls come into play, accessed by pressing and holding the R button. Now, while you can rotate the camera 360 degrees whilst inside buildings, outside you're limited to flipping the camera by 90 degrees, which does feel a little bit clunky. You're able to highlight enemies and objects by holding either the A or B buttons, and this is going to be essential at times, especially on nighttime missions where enemies and doors become literally impossible to spot. So as well as knocking enemies out, some commandos are able to use weapons to take out enemies, but again the weapon controls in the game are pretty atrocious. With a weapon equipped, you have to press and hold the ZL button to ready it and aim using the left thumbstick, but weapons lock on to nearby enemies, including tied up ones, and it can be a right nightmare trying to target the right enemy before you're taken out. You'll often find that if you're controlling one character and you haven't hidden another character very well and they get attacked by an enemy, by the time you've managed to switch to them and try and shoot the enemy, it's often too late. And while you can move multiple characters at once, if they have different weapons with different ranges selected, then your aiming appears to default to the shortest range weapon, which can be a bit of a pain. Now if one of your commandos is killed in a mission, it usually doesn't end and you can continue to play on, but there often isn't much point as you usually need that character to complete specific objectives. Like here my sapper was killed, but he's the only one that is able to use explosives to blow up the tank, so you might as well just load up a save file and try again if any of your team are killed. Now speaking of saves, while you can save in the pause menu, the game also allows you to perform a quick save by hitting right on the D-pad and then pressing ZL, with ZR performing a quick load. And I advise that you quick save as often as you can because like the controls, the game's missions often require a lot of trial and error. Now I mentioned before that each character comes with its own skill set. As well as using explosives, the sapper is able to cut barbed wire fences and use his minesweeper to detect and disable mines. The thief can pickpocket items from unsuspecting guards and clamber across telephone wires, and as well as the commandos, you also gain control of several other types of characters, including a spy called Natasha who can hold enemies' attention whilst commandos sneak past them, but she has no combat skills, and a dog called Whiskey who can bark to distract enemies. But once more, very little direction is given on how to use these abilities, which really becomes an issue. For example, Natasha can walk by some enemies with no issues whatsoever, but certain enemies attack her on sight. She can also be used to distract anyone, but some guards cotton onto her after about 10 seconds and then attack her, and there's no information given to differentiate between these two types of guards. Whiskey the dog can wander around but can't venture too far from your character or he'll freeze in place and you won't be able to control him, and the only way to regain control of him is by moving closer to him or by Natasha blowing a dog whistle. Now while this remaster does retain all of the gameplay mechanics and scenarios which originally offered a lot of fun and some excellent gameplay, I think that people who are new to the series likely won't find some of the outdated gameplay mechanics appealing, and people like me who love the original Commandos and Desperados games on PC will likely be put off by the new and extremely frustrating control scheme. Even when using the mouse and keyboard on PC, Commandos 2 was still pretty challenging, so the new control scheme just compounds the difficulty factor even when playing on normal difficulty. When it comes to the game's visuals, while they are an improvement over the original, they still look pretty dated, and while character models and interactable objects appear to have had the textures replaced with high resolution versions, when compared with the original Commandos 2 game, the rest of the visuals just look like someone applied a Photoshop sharpen filter to them. Audio wise, things are pretty fine in this department, with sound effects and music retaining their original qualities. So now let's get on to rating the game. Now I rate games between 1 and 5 stars, with a shovelware stamp of approval reserved for the worst games on the eShop. This rating's based on my own personal opinion on the quality and quantity of a title's gameplay, and whether I feel it offers value for money to potential buyers. For a rating, I'd give Commandos 2 HD Remaster 2 out of 5 stars. With its poorly implemented console controls, myriad of bugs and less than impressive visual overhaul, I can't really recommend buying Commandos 2 HD Remaster. Compared with the original game, which I do recommend you play if you have a PC, this HD remaster is just a disappointment and in no way does them justice. At the end of the day, it's up to you the viewer to decide whether you're going to heed my warning on this one, or whether you go ahead and play it yourselves to see how you find it. You can get Commandos 2 HD Remaster from the UK Switch eShop for £26.99, or from the US eShop for $29.99. Alternatively, the game's also available on PlayStation, Xbox and Steam. And that's it for this review on Commandos 2 HD Remaster. Hit that like button if it helped you out, and leave your thoughts and opinions and experiences on the game if you've played it in the comment section below. As always, smash that subscribe button if you want to be notified of future Nintendo Switch reviews and content, and jump onto the Starseekers Discord server to say hello. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care and game on.